Mini drivers. I guess you're seeing them everywhere right now. This video is about to tell you why you might use one and which one might be good for you. Mark, tell us a little bit about mini drivers.
Yeah, well, they've been out a couple of years. We've had probably the last 5 or 6 years. I've had a couple come out here and there. It's unusual we see all 3 companies come out with them at the same time, so something's going on here, right?
Right.
And I think part of it is obviously the tour. Guys are getting longer and longer and longer, and they want something a little bit shorter off the tee. So it's a second driver for most of the tour players. Kind of saw that with Rory a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
But for the average player, that's a different thing, right? So I've got a lot of people that just struggle with drivers, mostly because of length. If you have problems with how long the club gets, and most drivers are getting longer and longer every year. So typical drivers are 45 and a half or 45 and 3/4 now. So if you struggle with length and stuff, I mean that could be help. If you're trying to hit it off the deck, the problem is that you need some speed.
Yeah.
So, a couple different uses for it.
Yeah. So this video, we're going to try and break that down. We're going to look at the Taylormade R7, we're going to look at the Titleist GT280 and the Callaway Elyte Mini. Now they're 3 kind of different packages, although they all say mini driver. So we're trying to dispel all of that for you. Then we're going to do some robot testing as well. So we've got the driver snapped in the robot. We're going to hit 3 degrees down with the angle of attack. So this is simulating a shot off the fairway as such, a trapped shot, 0 face, 0 path, 100 miles an hour. Then we've also got some data that Dr. Tom Mace has verified here. 100 miles an hour again, but we hit 0 angle of attack. So this is like off the tee shot.
Yeah.
We're not trying to sweep it like a driver. We're saying this is the mid-ground.
Right.
We've opted for the 13 degree or as close to the 13 degree options in all of them as possible to give us an apples to apples test. They do come in 11.5 degree models, which we'll touch on as well.
Yeah, it's more specifically a smaller driver at that point, right?
Yeah. Okay. So first things first, before we robot test, Mark's already touched on it, but we kind of created some short notes here on who they might be for. So try and put yourself in one of these categories and comment as we go. We got pull back some driver distance. That's more like that tour player we were just talking about.
Right. As the courses get tighter and there's different holes and stuff and different landing areas, their drivers are carrying 300 yards. So they're looking at something that goes, 20, 30 yards shorter than that.
Yeah, a little shorter in shaft length, a little more loft.
Right. A little more control, obviously, with the shorter length. So,
yep. And you touched on this one too. Not confident with the driver. Now that can come from shaft length. It can come from players that are used to those old persimmon styles and now they've got these 460cc heads. This kind of fills the gap in between there.
Yeah, that's typically more like, you're talking about the 11 degrees probably, more off a tee shot. Being 43 and a half inches, it's quite a bit shorter than a 45 and a half inch driver. So if you really struggle trying to, get contact, some people it's length. Some people have other swing faults, but not going to fix it. But it's certainly worth a shot.
A little more control. And then we want to hit longer than a fairway wood off of the tee because we've got, let's call a fairway wood as a wash 15 degrees.
Yep.
We've got 13 degree option through to 11.5 degree options, and we've got adjustability where we can minus loft and all those kind of things. So because those lofts are lower, we should be able to pump it further than a 15 degrees.
Certainly off a tee.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've got, longer par 4s or, you're trying to hit into, obviously that's off the deck, but, par 3s that you can't reach on your own golf course, maybe that's an option.
Yep. We talked about not confident with the driver. In the reverse of that, you've got someone who always hits the fairway wood off the tee, but they're not confident with the fairway wood because the CCs are so small, and we see these CCs increasing, but not quite at a driver level.
I definitely fall in that category. I'm pretty comfortable hitting an easy driver, so it's not such a big deal for me, but I don't like hitting 3-woods off the tee. I can sky it pretty easily or mishit it. The size of the face certainly helps.
Yeah. And then we've got the lower spinning fairway wood off the deck because we've got that lower loft. Right. If you can hit these things off the deck and you touched on its speed, then you're going to see these things spin lower than a 15 degree or a 16.5 degree fairway wood.
Yeah. The tricky thing is, though, if you think about it, really low speed players, the odds of them trying to get these off the deck and hit them further than a 3-wood, it's probably not going to happen, right? Yep. So if you're swinging a driver under 100 miles an hour, or even, especially under 90, typically that's a 4-wood actually goes further than a 3-wood. So off the fairway, this probably won't work.
Yeah.
Right. So just don't think because you're going to go, a little longer shaft, bigger head off the deck, it's going to go further because typically at lower club head speeds, more loft is your friend and it actually carries further. So maybe not be for those people.
And the last but not least is the people who just want to hit driver off the deck.
Yeah.
Not many of them out there, I wouldn't have thought, but definitely easier than an actual driver.
Yeah, even at those lower speeds, just under 100 and stuff with the driver, if you do, like I'm really shallow, so I can pick it off, if the fairway's, kind of spongy and I get it high enough on the face to get distance, that becomes the trick. If you get a really tight fairways, You know, you're only going to get so far up, and that's maybe a test we should try later.
Yeah.
You know, what happens when you're hitting this thing without hitting the ground?
Yeah,
but just barely on the bottom of the club.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing.
And the last piece I didn't write down, but this is definitely a big one for the good players out there, is workability.
Yeah. And that's definitely, you know, a lot of the tour players play, you know, a 3-wood that they can draw off a tee.
Yep.
Typically, I mean, I think of number 10 at Masters. Obviously, is fresh in my mind.
Just get it rolling.
You know, that most of the guys are hitting 3-woods because they can turn it over easier. Yep. Anytime you get a smaller head, your CG is closer to the shaft. You can rotate and control it more.
Yep.
So absolutely can work it more.
Work it more. We hope that little introduction gives you an idea, like, where am I in those categories? Do I fit into one of those, more of those? Tell us in the comments, why are you playing a mini driver? Which mini driver do you think is going to be good for you? Predict it, and then after some numbers, tell us what you actually think you're going to go and purchase. So let's get into the robot testing.
Give that a shot.
We're going to start with the Elyte Mini, 13.5 degrees, 3 degrees down.
This is the biggest one of the bunch, too,
biggest,
by the way.
Biggest
this is like a
CCs.
small driver.
Yep.
And the ball went flying.
More speed with more spin, I guess. Okay, 100 mile an hour, 1.47 smash, easy one with the ball speed at 147 there. 26.5 spin, so 2662. And launching pretty low, 7 8 degrees-ish. So we've got 13 degrees of loft. We're hitting down on it 3, so we're kind of trapping it.
Right.
And then we talked about CG location being higher on these deeper heads, so it's just launching it low. But we did get a reasonable spin there, 2600.
Yeah, that's pretty good numbers, really. That's kind of where you want to be with a driver, right? So, you know, other than the fact that it's launching too low.
But this is for that person who's trapping down on it, right? So they're like, hey, I'm hitting down, we know we're going to launch it low. How much can we get it in the air?
Yeah, that's not quite enough, to be honest with
No, but we remember adjustability on all of these. We got 2 degrees with the Callaway, we got adjustability 2 degrees with almost everything, actually. So. Okay, next up, you pick Callaway, Taylormade or Titleist?
Well, let's go in order of size then. Let's go to the Taylormade.
Taylormade.
Kind of the middle of the road size.
Let's do it. Same smash, same ball.
Yep.
Launched identical, spun 200 RPMs less, 250 RPMs less.
That's quite a bit.
So we've gone, like you said, this is the next one down in size. We've dropped about 35 cc's in head size. And we would, you know, that would kind of say that the CG is moving up a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we kind of would expect to see this maybe spin a tiny bit less. That's interesting. And this is the tweener between the two, right? Like, trying to figure out who are they for. We'll talk about it, but this definitely sits between the two. Last but not least, let's have a look at the Titleist GT280. Ooh, that was different.
Low burner there.
Like ball speed. So this is the one caveat. This is the 13-degree model versus 13.5 in the other two.
So a little lower.
So a little lower, and we saw a little more ball speed because of that, most likely.
Right.
A little lower spin again, 2200. So it's really, really moving across the ground. But again, a little bit loft in there, and also that CG position. And then launch was 1.5 degrees lower than the other two.
That's interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
But we also saw that draw. Glenn, let's have a look at the bird's eye view. So this is the 3 degrees down angle of attack. So this really is someone who's trapping it out there.
Right.
And look at that top chart there, the flight characteristic, blue being Titleist, green being Taylormade, and red being the Callaway.
Well, Titleist is obviously launching lower.
Yep.
I'll look at this on the main test as well, because that was just one shot, right?
Yep. And then fade bias is the Taylormade. So it's interesting. Callaway was pretty neutral.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea of the flight you're going to get. 3 degrees down, 100 miles an hour, all things being equal, struck in the center. Now, for the bigger test, we got 100 miles an hour. We hit 0 degrees on it. I'm going to talk numbers. Mark's got the fun stuff with the graph, but let's go over it. We've got 3 different heads. Let's start with the biggest in CC. So Elyte 340. R7, 305, and then Titleist 280. Obviously, it's written on
And it's noticeable when you look down at them. I mean, the Titleist looks like a small traditional driver from 25 years ago. The Callaway is just a slightly smaller, what we consider now to be a normal driver. So, but definitely different in size.
Let's talk about that. All the categories that we listed off at the beginning. They would kind of point to different models in that.
Right. And certainly if you're struggling with a driver, you probably want the biggest one in the group.
Yep.
Right? If you really don't have to worry about hitting the center of the golf club, then all of them are an option.
Yep.
But yeah, if you're struggling with a driver, I would definitely look at the Callaway or the Taylormade, to start with, because they're the biggest ones. Most, and you're just a lot more confidence looking down at it that you're going to hit it solid.
Then the fairway wood.
Fairway wood, the
deck.
Titleist being smaller, looks like it'd be easier to get off the ground, although
Got that flat sole on it
it's
too.
got a flat sole as well, right?
Yep.
So, it's more 3-wood-ish.
Yes.
I guess if you look at the two Spectrum, and the Taylormade's right in the middle between
Right in the
the
middle. It's a real tweener between
Yeah,
them.
and the other thing we looked at too is these are all in the standard setting.
Yep.
And when we looked them down on the ground and stuff, and obviously some people, like me essentially, can't say anything looks closed or open or whatever, but people look at, how does the face look? And to me, certainly, actually the Callaway is the most open.
So that means the face is pointing a little to the
right,
right.
Yep. Which makes it looks almost square to me, which means it's probably 2 degrees open.
Taylormade was shut.
Taylormade was shut mostly, yeah. And then the Titleist is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
It almost looks like it's zero. So it's probably 1 degree open or something.
And again, they're all
But
adjustable.
They're
in
all
the sleeve.
adjustable. You can change that,
Yep.
right? But when you change that, obviously different connectors do different things. The Taylormade, anything you change, adjust, it's going to get more upright.
Yep.
Whereas the other ones have a little bit, you have different settings for loft and lie.
Yeah.
So you can do them independently a little bit.
And then you've got the adjustability of weight. Let's talk
Yeah,
about that.
that's
right
a whole
quick.
other thing, right?
Callaway, we've got the 3 weight positions right in the back of the driver,
Right.
so you
and
can
you've got a small one in the front. You can do a little adjustment. That's mostly swing weight, though,
style.
right?
Yep. And then R7. I mean, you can talk about this one. It's got so much.
Yeah, I got some history on this one. I mean, to be honest, it kind of brings back memories. I was actually on the bus driving out to the range to see the original R7 quad, which had basically the 4 screws in here, quad,
Yep.
3 adjustable, and they had it on the range with a robot, and they'd set them all different spaces and see how it went different right and left. And it was really a big deal. I mean, this was, I would consider, one of the big changes in golf. This was the first adjustable, heavily adjustable weights and adjustable hosel on any driver.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it is kind of a retro thing.
Pretty cool. And then they're moving a lot of weight around relative to the head weight itself.
The other two don't have quite as much weight around. Obviously, the Callaway's got a pretty big weight, but only moves side to side and not very far.
And then the GT has got a slug in the front and the back.
Right, and it's just moving about 8 to 10 grams forward and backwards.
Yep.
So not huge adjustability. Obviously, the Taylormade has the most adjustability.
Yep.
So yeah, different.
All different things.
Yep.
Lie angles all pretty similar. 57 degrees in the Callaway and the Taylormade. 56 in the Titleist, a little flatter.
Right.
Interesting.
A little smaller too.
Yep. And this 100-mile-an-hour test, the ball speed, pretty much all 147. So 147 smash factor out
Yeah,
of
that's
it.
kind of what you're getting. I mean, that's USG limit, and they're all right at it. So wouldn't expect much difference.
Launch, the highest launching was the Taylormade at 11, but only just pipped the Callaway by 0.6 of a degree. And then the Titleist, just like we saw in this hitting down on it test,
Little
launched
lower.
a little lower, but we've also got that loft implication there being a little lower as the static.
Yeah.
Then we got spin, highest spinning, 2,900 almost with the Callaway, 2,400 and then 2,400. So Taylormade and the Titleist spin about the same. Callaway spins a decent amount more.
Yep.
And then we've got peak height, obviously just running purely in line with the launch being the same and the spin being higher. Highest is Callaway, then the Taylormade, and then the Titleist considerably lower.
Yep.
And we've got carry here. Taylormade carried the longest in this 0 test at 250, 245 with the Elyte, 242 with the Titleist.
I mean, we're pretty close, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously, you make some adjustments to that based on your swing. You can probably get more distance out of one versus the other, but, it's all adjustments.
Yeah. Now let's take a little look at the graphs, because you had some good comments about the graphs.
Yeah, it kind of shows what you'd think, really. I mean, we went from biggest to smallest here. We've got the Callaway first, which is the largest, and that has the least right to left as you hit, heel and toe.
Yep.
Which makes sense, right? The MOI is going to be larger for the
Yep.
bigger head, so it's going to be a little more forgiving, and less variance.
Yep.
Taylormade is kind of right in the middle. It's
Yep.
really hot in the center.
Off the center, as
and,
most
and
of
you
the
lose a
Taylormades
bit
are.
of both. And then the Titleist, obviously, it's got 3, distinct circles,
Yeah.
depending on where you're hitting it, and that's workability. Right?
Workability,
You
right.
you can really adjust this thing. And if you think about the Titleist, it's a smaller package. Especially heel to toe. So the CG is closer to the shaft.
Yep.
Like I kind of touched on earlier, it makes it easier to work the ball and all that. And obviously, as you hit it different places on the face, you're going to work it as well. So it's really 3 different clubs, and I think they're for 3 different people.
Yeah.
I think really the Callaway seems to me as it would be the answer for most people that are really struggling with the driver because it's too long.
Agreed.
Right? It's the
Yeah.
biggest, most forgiving, looks like, because it's biggest. Probably a more difficult one to hit off the deck
Absolutely.
than any of it. The Taylormade's right in the middle.
Right.
Kind of good for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And
Most
the
adjustable.
Yeah, there's lots of adjustability.
Yeah.
Probably more adjustable than any of them, right? And then the Titleist to me is in a different category, really. It's really a big 3-wood rather than a mini driver.
I agree. I think that's the big nugget that we should take out.
It's lower spinning by a bunch, so if you've got a lot of speed and that's kind of what you're looking for, you're a better player, Titleist is definitely in the mix.
Yes.
But if you're a high handicap, I'm probably thinking the Titleist is not going to help you much.
I agree. I hope that gives you an idea of what mini drivers are. We've got one more nugget, so hang in there. One little secret thing to show you before you end it up. But drop in the comments if you like the video, number one. Like, feedback is really important to us. It's why we do what we do. Tell us if you think we nailed what the drivers were for, which one you're going to use. If you're going to use one, which category of ours did you fit into? I think this is a really fun conversation to have. It's such an interesting storyline right now, so that's why we're on it. We want you to participate in it. Make this be the biggest forum for mini drivers on the web. Now, the last little secret, head covers. Elyte Mini, boxing glove, I mean, no shade on Callaway, nice, good quality thing, right?
Looking, yeah, just like a driver.
GT, same thing, classic.
Smaller version of the driver,
everyone wants it. Taylormade, they went retro, like
This is cool, though. Yeah,
really
like I said,
cool back.
that was a big deal when it came out.
Yeah, and the little secret, and they, if you saw the burner driver, you saw what was hidden inside of this. This is the R7, and if you recall, the R7 had the TP versions.
Right. Yep.
If I can do this on camera, we've got a great editor here,
yeah.
Austin, who's going to help us. But basically, inside of this
That's cool.
is the original racing stripe from the TP, which I think is really fun for the driver.
That's great.
So it's the little touches in golf. We're geeks, we love it. That's some pretty cool stuff. We hope this breakdown helped. Like I said, let us know in the comments, like, subscribe. Thank you, Mark, for all your input today. It was really good.
Yeah, just got to give these a try.
Yeah, get on course.